What is up, ladder climbers? This is Antoine Wade here from Elevate to the Unknown and nextgenheights.com. That's NXTGenHEIGHTS.com, guys. And it is Thursday, September the 25th at 7 a.m. Central. And I got the big news for you guys this morning. And the big news is going to be about manufacturing coming back to the United States, to America. Procter & Gamble. They just announced that they are spending $150 million to bring back jobs from overseas to the state of Iowa. That's 100 new jobs paying over $31 an hour. And while companies are dealing with expensive H-1B visas, you know how that's going to tax a lot of these big tech companies, and they're will and want to eliminate American workers for cheaper labor. Well, they're going to have to pay a lot more money for it now, which also means that they're going to have to pivot to hiring American workers. So these are going to be the individuals who are going to be graduating from school. Unemployment rate for graduates in computer science, 6%, software engineering, 7%. That's the highest it's been in a very, very long time. So you graduates that are coming from out of school, it's going to turn around for you, and it's going to turn around pretty fast. But bringing back American workers is what this story is going to be about and what the show is going to be about. The bigger story, though, is I have a special guest. His name is Aaron Kolodzik. He spent 22 years at Procter & Gamble. He ran a $3.1 billion company as the chief supply chain officer. Then he walked away from it all to help other executives who feel stuck. So this show today is going to be about two things. First, manufacturing jobs coming back to America and what it means for you all watching this show today. Second, why successful executives are leaving big companies to find meaning all over again, and how you can make smart career moves without losing everything. So guys, let me know who's all in the house today. Looks like we have Locksme in the house. Good to see you, Locksme. While you guys are coming in, make sure that you hit the like button on this video because we want others to be able to see this. It's going to be a fantastic show today. Make sure if you are new to our channel and haven't hit the subscribe button yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell because we go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Central to 8 a.m. Central. We have a powerful show for you guys. I would also like for you guys to hit or type your chat, or type your job in the chat. I want to see what fields that you guys are in. I know many of us are in tech. I know many of us are in healthcare, but type your job in the chat. Let me give you guys the latest news first, okay? And then we're going to bring Aaron on. Procter & Gamble. The wonderful P&G. They make all the cool stuff. But on September 19th, they are bringing back production to Iowa. That's when they announced it anyway. They're building a 150,000 square foot facility. And this is work that they used to do in China. And this is work that they used to do in Mexico. Now they're going to be doing it in America. Now you may ask the question, why is this happening? Well, for two reasons. First, Trump, his tariffs. It made it expensive to bring products from overseas. So companies have to pivot. Executives have to make decisions to build here in the United States. P&G was facing $1 billion in extra costs from the tariffs. Second, companies learned during COVID that depending on other countries is very, very risky. We all heard about the supply chain issues that happened during COVID. Many products, the prices spiked because there was so much demand and not enough supply. And companies couldn't get products fast enough. So people were selling on the black market. Companies were holding on to it, jacking prices up to the people who cannot actually afford it. And unfortunately, that's how the supply chain was working during the COVID pandemic. And our executives figured out that there was a challenge there and needed to be fixed. So one of the biggest things is manufacturing, bringing that back to the United States. Because if something like that was to happen again, you don't want that to happen again, because a lot of people lost their lives during that time. But getting back to P&G, the P&G facility in Iowa City, it already makes every Oral-B electric toothbrush in the world. Now they're adding more production that used to be overseas. They got $5.2 billion in tax credits from Iowa to make this happen. And these aren't minimum wage jobs either. P&G is paying $31, almost $32 an hour for these workers. That's the average. So you think about that. That's about what, about $67,000 a year? And these are good jobs with benefits, good jobs working for a company with a major brand, a major logo, a Fortune 50 company. Anytime you have P&G on your resume, it's going to open doors because they're known to be the company with the best supply chain, or one of the best supply chains in the United States. And they build some of the best products in the United States. So these jobs are really, really good jobs with great benefits. These jobs are the jobs that allow for you to buy a house, raise a family. And they're in locations that are not so expensive. You think about it. Iowa City, not so expensive. Now, you're not talking about New York. You're not talking about California. You're talking about the good old Midwest. So P&G is doing really, really well with that. But P&G isn't alone. This is happening just about everywhere now. Check out what Eli Lilly is doing here in the beautiful state of Texas. Okay. I want to show you a quick video.
A major win announced today for the Houston economy. Fortune 100 maker Eli Lilly, it's a drug maker, is building a massive new manufacturing plant on the northeast side.
Fox 26's Greg Grugan is here to tell us about the opportunity the project brings to parts of the Lone Star State. Greg.
Carolyn and Rasha, Eli Lilly, one of the biggest names in big pharma, is not messing around. This new manufacturing plant represents a $6.5 billion investment at Generation Park in northeast Harris County. Lilly Chief Executive Dave Ricks said the Houston area beat out 300 competing proposals from 40 different states, all vying to be players in reshoring America's pharmaceutical making capacity.
Texas offered speed and scale, from blueprint to validation to production of medicines. This region offers top-notch talent, rooted in a history in the energy, aerospace, and medical industries.
As Houston provides an impressive list of assets, including easy access to chemical manufacturers, adjacency to a massive port for export, and collaboration with the institutions in the world's biggest medical center. Lilly.
You heard it. It's not just Eli Lilly either. You're talking about companies like GSK. They are investing $30 billion over 5 years in American manufacturing. Companies across every industry are realizing that it's smarter to make things here in the United States. Manufacturing is coming back, guys. And nationwide, there are 449,000 manufacturing jobs that companies can't fill right now. The jobs are there. Manufacturing pays about $29 an hour on average, but companies need workers with the right skills. And guess who's leading the way? The beautiful state of Texas. And they have over 40,000 manufacturing jobs coming back. Georgia is next. Virginia is next. Pennsylvania, all seeing massive investments. And this is ultimately creating opportunity for American workers. This manufacturing comeback is creating massive opportunities that we often don't talk about, because what hits the headlines are layoffs, right? Well, here's something else that we don't often talk about. Executives running these companies are burning out. They are walking away from big money to find something else more meaningful. And that's exactly what my guest did. He spent 22 years at the same company that we just talked about, Procter & Gamble. I want to show and share with you guys a data point here. Executives burning out. New data shows that 56% of executives report burning out. Even more crazy, 71% of CEOs say that they have imposter syndrome. Ain't that something? Right? You think about a lot of the times when you are sitting down with an executive, they got their stuff together. But I think we learned by looking at, politics over the last couple of years that a lot of them don't have their stuff together. But it just feels like they do, because that's just the position that they're in. They say that they feel like frauds, even though they're running billion-dollar companies. So you aren't the only one who feels like that every once in a while in your career. It's actually pretty normal. And here's what's happening. Executives, they climb the ladder for 20 or 30 years. They make great money. Everyone thinks that they're super successful. But inside, they feel empty. They work 70-hour weeks. They miss their kids growing up. That's pretty tough, right? Sometimes they work longer because they're always on call. Their health falls apart. They want to leave the company, but they can't because of the golden handcuffs. Their compensation packages are so good that walking away feels financially impossible. So they stay stuck in the jobs that are ultimately killing them. In 2024, I read a study that basically said that over 2,200 executives left their companies. That's 16% more than 2023. And by July of this year, July 2025, another 1,500 had already quit. And these aren't people that are getting fired. These are people who are choosing to leave. Now, the question is, where are they going? Many become consultants. Many are becoming life coaches. They're using their corporate experiences to help other people avoid the mistakes that they made. And this isn't just about being tired. Burnout actually kills people. It causes 120,000 deaths every year in America. Executives sleep less than 6 hours a night. They have depression at higher rates than regular workers. Their relationships falls apart. You hear about all the CEO scandals. We talked about one most recently with the astronomer CEO. Right? Companies lose $322 billion every single year because of burnout. But the real cost is human lives. So this is going to be a fantastic show. Good to see you, Madembe. Good to see you, Miss Wade. Good to see you, MLC. Good to see you, T-Mac. K Young, good to see you in the house. Guys, I want you to be active. I want you to ask questions. I'm going to introduce my guest who has experienced a lot of what I was talking about today in the earlier part of the show. My guest today lived this story. Aaron Kolodzik, he spent 22 years at Procter & Gamble, the same company that we just talked about, bringing jobs back to Iowa. He became a Fortune 50 vice president. Then he ran supply chain for a $3.1 billion company managing 4,000 employees. But something happened. Success wasn't working anymore. So he walked away from the corporate world. Now he runs something called the Unstuck Master Plan. He helps high achieving executives who are drowning in work, running on empty, feeling like they can't survive, not living their best lives. What we're going to be talking about today are three big things. First, what it's really like inside these big manufacturing companies. The second thing we're going to be talking about is why successful people feel stuck, because from the outside, we see it, right? You're making a whole bunch of money. You have big houses, you have beautiful cars, you have a beautiful family, but a lot of them feel stuck. And the third thing we're going to be talking about is how to make career changes without destroying everything that you built. And this matters because many of you watching are in the same exact spot. You're making good money, but you're miserable. You want to change, but you're scared. So let me bring in Mr. Aaron. He's going to join the Daily Show. I already have him on the screen. But welcome to the Daily Climb. Aaron, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm good. Thanks, Antoine. Super happy to be here. It's, this manufacturing topic is so near and dear to my heart. It's, when I was 19 years old, I first walked into a manufacturing company. I was an engineering student and I didn't really know what I was doing, right? It's like many of, I'm sure your folks, it's like, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I was going to go to medical school. I was studying chemical engineering, doing a lot of partying, having fun at college. And I got a co-op opportunity to walk into a polyethylene manufacturing plant in Clinton, Iowa, and everything changed. And for the time from I was 19 to the time I was 37, the mission was to be a plant manager. And so this topic of manufacturing coming back to the US it's me, right? It's the life I loved. And of course, because I worked for P&G and I worked in Iowa City, it's even more near and dear to me because I had two boys born in Iowa City. I'm super excited to see this shift in the landscape, but things do need to change, right? Like if we're going to make this thing happen. So
I love it. You're supportive of it. That's what I'm hearing. You are supportive of it.
For sure. Yeah. I think, and having sat in the seat on the pharmaceutical side. So in my last job as VP at Procter & Gamble, I was in the healthcare business. And to your point earlier on the difficulties, like I'll never forget being in Destin, Florida on spring break in March of 2020, sitting on phone calls, trying to figure out what we were going to get from China, what we're going to get from India. Did we have BCP or backup suppliers? Like what we were going to do because of all of the uncertainty in the world, right? And to think about Lilly bringing, $6.5 billion. That's a huge amount. And for your listeners, if you think you're in the tech industry, there's 600 jobs there. So they're going to spend $6.5 billion in capital with 4,000 construction jobs, but then only 600 people come out the back end, right? When you think about that, that's a lot of money. That just tells you how much money's in that space. And when you go deeper into the article, it talks a lot about like the technology that they're investing in.
Yep.
Right. The manufacturing jobs from when I was in 1995, when I first went into the industry, are way different than the manufacturing jobs of 2025 and 2026. Like automation, technology, like those opportunities are really like, if you're good at that, you're going to have an opportunity to carve an incredible niche.
Each one of those jobs that they're talking about, especially for Eli Lilly, are paying over $100,000 a year. So They are fantastic jobs. I'm talking about like some of them paying $160,000, $180,000 a year. So fantastic opportunities, guys. But Aaron, let me get to you.
Sure.
You ran supply chain for a $3.1 billion company with 4,000 people reporting to you. From the outside, that looks like the American dream. But you walked away to help other executives who feel stuck. What was the moment that you realized that success wasn't working?
To your point earlier on imposter syndrome or guilt, there is a lot of guilt when you're in that situation. When you have the things, right? I found myself at that role where the family was good, the health was good, the finances were great, and but yet something was still missing. Right. And as I took a look at what was going on, I was just empty inside. You had said it exactly that. I was empty inside. And the thought of continuing to do that for the next however many years, like I just knew that there had to be something more. Right. And it took me a while. Right. So there wasn't like a specific moment, like in earlier parts of my career, where there were certainly moments where I was absolutely stuck and I knew that I had to make a shift. This for me was really like, what is the second half of life looking like? Right. I think more and more, I mean, our average age is, we're staying alive longer. Right. So I'm like, what does it look like? And for me, this thought of like retiring and then just playing golf every day, like just didn't settle. Right. And I see this happen a lot. And I look around in the C-suite, or I look around at the boardroom, I see people that have sold out their careers and lives only to live life later. And it's like, well, later never comes. Right? Later just never comes because they're so addicted to like being important, being in that thing and being needed, that they never actually get to be present with their family. And I looked at that and thought, man, I want to be the granddad that's like around. Right. And I wanted to make a difference. Like I really had this thing inside of me where I'm like, man, I've learned all of this stuff through the years. I've had such an amazing run. Like what could I do differently that could like wake me up every day? Right. Cause like the problem, once you've solved like the same problems over and over again, it's fun to try it a couple different times. I needed to know it. Like I was with Procter & Gamble for a long time, like 22, almost 23 years. Once I knew I could do it outside somewhere else, it's like to continue to do that just was empty. I knew I needed to do something else. And so that's where I really spent some time deep in reflection on like, what could that look like? And that's where the coaching stuff started to come to play.
I love it. I love it. For someone who's watching, who's climbing a corporate ladder, Aaron, what were some warning signs that you ignored that you wish you'd paid attention to earlier? Like if you were to think back on your career as an executive, right, or going and climbing the ladder, any sort of warning signs that you ignored that you wish you'd paid attention to?
For sure. I think, in the different parts of the career, there's a couple examples. And I think when you start to sacrifice something that really, really matters to you and you tell yourself that that's okay, that's an absolute warning sign. And I'll give you an example. When I knew that I needed to become a plant manager, and sometimes I would say that many of you don't know what you're searching for, and that's okay. But you should be continuously seeking it. Well, I was seeking to become a plant manager, and I knew I needed to do that, but I had reached a point where I would have done anything to be a plant manager. Like I was signing my family up to move to Romania. I was signing my family to move up to Poland. I was signing my family up to move to Thailand. I applied for jobs in all of these locations just to be the plant manager. And I know my wife was going, "You're crazy. Like, what are you doing?" And she's been incredibly supportive and has always been incredibly supportive, and she would have done it. But I realized, man, I am literally willing to sacrifice anything. My family, which most of us say, well, what's the most important thing in the world to you? Your family. But if you would have asked me, if somebody looked at the outside, they would have said, Aaron, that certainly does not seem to be the case. Becoming a plant manager would have been the senior director or whatever that level was the most important thing. And I think that's the warning sign. It was a warning sign for me where I literally had to, I got to a point where I'm like, wait a minute, what am I willing to do? Like, why am I doing this? I was forcing it, which was one thing. And number two, I would have never really wanted to do that. And I would have regretted it. So thankfully I got to that point before I broke it, right? Before things broke, where I said, no, here's the deal. I need to relax just a little bit. And if that comes, it comes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Yep. But that certainly was one time where I'm like, man, and I think others do it with physical health. I think they stopped going to the gym for 1 week. No, I got a ton of stuff this week, so I'm not going to go to the gym this week. Or I'm not going to take care of myself this week. Then it becomes 2 weeks. Then it becomes a month. Then it becomes 3 months. And then the ability to get back there and do it. Then you go back in for a week and you're like, I can't do this. And you're sore all over. It's like, we do these things gradually, right? There is not typically a situation where it's just like, boom, you sacrificed everything. It's just little by little, you start to let that go.
Yep.
Right? That's what happened with the job for me. And I've seen it happen physically for many folks. And I've been through seasons of that too. But I think those are the warning signs when you start to take a reflection back. And I would say, if I've learned anything in the last 2 years of coaching, the lack of reflection is one of the single biggest opportunities for people to look at. They're not actually reflecting upon what is it that I really am doing? Because if you asked me to reflect in that moment of like what I was trying to do, clearly I would have been like, wait a minute, I'm not in integrity with who I actually say I am. I was doing things that were not like willing to take my family anywhere in the world that wouldn't have been in line with what I really wanted. Right. And I think that's the watch out.
Yep. You mentioned coaching over the last 2 years. Most people would probably say, man, he's getting to the money. Like he's making so much money. Right. And to leave the corporate world behind, being a, chief supply chain officer, to become, a life coach, a career coach, an executive coach. Take us to that decision. Like, what did your family say? What did your friends think when you ultimately made that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a journey, right? Because I mean, if I look at the last year, so I've been out for a year now, and I certainly have made nowhere near what I would have made by being employed somewhere else, right? We're not anywhere close, like less than 10% at this point, right? So there certainly was that. Family, I would say my family was incredibly supportive. I think, my son was like, let's go. My wife was like, I think this is what you need to do, but I'm scared. Right. And that's just a real reality, right? Like when you're used to the W-2 income, like it's comfortable, until it's not, right? To be clear, right, when I left a year ago was because there was a shift strategically in the company, right? So I lost my job like many of your viewers, right? I was severed as part of that program. Like it was a change in strategic direction. Didn't do anything wrong. Super supportive of what the company wanted to do. However, the decision was to not go back in, right? And that was hard. It was hard for my wife as she looked at that, and it's been a journey. Now we're a year into it. I think she gets it. Right. Like we're in that space where she sees like, hey, you're doing the right things. You're helping people and all of that. But it was hard. I would say my friends were a little bit mixed, So a lot of my friends were like, are you kidding me? Like, why would you do that? Just keep working another 5 years and then you'll never have to do anything if you want. Another 10 years. Like, I'm like, yeah, but part of the drive to get to the top takes courage. Right? You have got to push on things that you really need to see happen in your business. And I did that my entire career. Making this leap into entrepreneurship I made the leap at 49, like that takes courage. And there is a part of me that just knows that I need to go do that. Just like I needed to be a plant manager, right? Like that shift. And in this case, I'm doing it where I'm like, literally the whole emphasis is helping people. Right. So my friends, who are my true friends, like they're like, totally get it. Really hope it works for you because they've never seen it happen. Like they're not used to that because they're used to run until you're 55 or 60 or whatever that is, usually 59 and a half. So you can get the retirement benefits. You don't have to pay the 10% penalty. And then you just relax and you travel and do all these other things. And I'm like, that's not me. Right. And so it definitely is different, and that's for sure.
Love it. I want to go a little bit deeper into the manufacturing expertise because you spent the majority of your career in that space, in the supply chain space. And something that I talk about on this channel often, Aaron, is supply chain management. So when I do videos on degrees and stuff like that, I always talk about how supply chain is a sleeper, and it is a field that is just about always in high demand, and they have jobs that pay a significant amount of money, but also allow for you to grow within your career. I entered supply chain in the technology side ever since I graduated school, right, and in college, and I've been in that field for about 18 years. But during your time as the chief supply chain officer, what made you realize how fragile our overseas manufacturing dependencies really were? Like, what specific incidents opened your eyes to, we need to have manufacturing back in the United States?
Yeah, I think, well, two, I mean, COVID certainly was a significant shift, right? More than just availability, but, you know, we went from ocean containers costing $1,500 to ship a container of products from China to the US to $20,000 per container. And when you're doing like hundreds or thousands of containers a year, that's a significant impact.
Wow.
And so we're talking, you know, millions and millions and millions for our company. And so if you think about across the US, it would have been billions and trillions, you know, it's a ton of money. That was before tariffs, right? And so you start thinking through that, and then you think through the port strikes and all of the things that happened specifically with, you know, workers in LA. The LA port shut down multiple times, right? And so now we have this truck, these ocean containers full of products sitting on the, you know, just sitting out there on the ocean, and you're like, I can't deliver. I mean, being a chief supply chain officer during COVID, and I told people what I did, I mean, typically the response was, I'm sorry. Right? Like, what do you do? I work in supply chain. Oh my gosh. Like that was literally the answer, right? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, like on an airplane, like, what do you do? So sorry. You know, it's like, it was tough. I mean, so COVID specifically was one, you know, and I think tariffs now starts to become number two, right? Like that's a real, and it's a popular topic. But tariffs have always been there, Antoine. Like tariffs is always something that supply chain officers or supply chain leaders manage.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's how are goods classified, you know, because that's how things can shift, right? And, you know, we even watched that with steel back in, you know, Trump's first administration, right? Where we saw like, okay, made products were different than raw products. Like if you can't actually do it in the US, that's a difficult part, right? Like that's the part where you kind of get stuck from a supply chain perspective. But I think, you know, the shift now is exciting. I just think for U.S. manufacturing, you hit it on the head, man. Like 500,000 jobs almost of open jobs. Like that's a big number.
Let's dive deeper into that. Like when manufacturing comes back, because it is coming back now, right? What types of jobs actually get created? Like explain to people what you've seen in your years of supply chain and working for these large corporations, right? Because I don't think a lot of times people get it, right? We talked about like the construction pieces of it earlier, but
sure,
like talk about like what types of jobs get created when this stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in the factories, I mean, there's everything from the person that is, you know, running the operational line. So the person who is making, you know, monitoring the system or process that's manufacturing the product that you're looking for, to a role in quality where you're looking at, hey, how do we test these things? Especially with Lilly, there's going to be a ton of lab jobs associated with that, right? So at the end of the day, like there is still work that needs to be done to make sure that this product is good, right? And so that those jobs start to come. Maintenance jobs, you know, people who have mechanical and electrical backgrounds, especially on the electrical side now. You know, I think there's a huge gap in PLC programming, which is not a lot different than some of the AI work and programming that we're doing. There's a huge opportunity there. And then leadership roles. Like for me, the leadership role in manufacturing is, to me, the like training ground for corporate leadership. Like the reason why I was so excited about getting into Procter & Gamble was because they let me run a manufacturing line operation when I was 23 or 24 years old, right? I had 12 people that worked for me. I had a $1.2 million budget. I had, you know, and my job was to develop that team, right? To produce as much as we could for as cheap as we could and have a great culture on that team. And they trained me how to do that early. And you're working with real people, right? At those, like, what I love about manufacturing is like, these are real people. And a lot of the other jobs, you don't get an opportunity to lead that many people at that young of an age. And so for me, allowed me to kind of try and fail, and learn my way, as well as balancing the work and personal life. Like, that's the hard part about it. And I think that's the piece that, if I think about what has to shift, in U.S. manufacturing, like, there's a reason why those jobs aren't being filled, right? There's a reason why H-1B and H-1A, both of those in the tech sector, like in that sector, are being filled. It's not because it's a combination of, they're cheaper and we don't want to pay it cheaper, but it's also a combination of, like, some people just don't want to do that work because of the perception of the lack of work-life balance, right? Like, I mean, I had to work on third shift for a couple, through seasons of my life, right? And so how do you do that? How do you maintain your work-life balance? And how do you, if you're a plant manager, which is one of my super passions to coach, I talk this all the time. They're like, yeah, but I really want to coach my kids. And you're able to do that, Antoine. Like, I want to be able to do those things. And I just can't find time. And my response is always, well, how do you do that, Aaron? I'm like, you sign up to coach. You sign up to coach and you commit, because then you're going to not show up for your kids, right? You're going to show up because you committed, and then the time, for some reason, actually gets figured out. It doesn't work the other way. You don't get to, like, say, hey, I want to find more time. How do I find more time so that I can go do this? Like, you'll never find the time. Like, our egos in manufacturing and corporate leadership are so high because that dopamine rush of, like, production and producing, it'll never stop. So you have to, like, actually force yourself to be reflective and say, I'm going to go coach. And when you do that, other things start to fall away, right? So it's just an interesting thing. But that shift has to happen for, people that are out there. If I think about the shift in supply chain and manufacturing, boomers and Gen X, man, like, we were made a little different, right? Like, we
y'all worked.
We worked, and it wasn't even a thing. Like, it wasn't even a thing, like, so we just did what we were told to do. It's about the grind, like, we're, the original latchkey kids, like, our parents weren't home. Like, we learned that that's what you do. You work. And we didn't have that balance, right? Something that it took me, 20 years to continue to figure out. But for millennials and Gen Z who have, I would say, a more holistic view of life, is, I think a good way to put it, our leaders need to adapt. Starting with themselves, and then starting with those they lead. Because if that's all you see is a boss that's working 60, 70 hours a week, millennials and Gen Z don't want that. That's not the life. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think the perception is that it has to be that way, but it certainly doesn't, right? We can do that differently.
Yep. I was going to ask you a question regarding, how should people position themselves? But I think you really nailed it already in this conversation is, for people wanting to get in manufacturing and supply chain and be prepared for this manufacturing boom, I heard you say, be prepared to work, guys. And, like, at the end of the day, be prepared to work, right? And one of the things that you said that was clear was there's a reason why, a lot of these jobs go to H-1B and H-1A workers. It's because they're prepared to put in the work and grind. So be prepared to do it, but you're going to get paid a lot of money.
Yeah. Yep. And you have to be prepared to work, because that is what it is, right? It is not just a sit back and relax type job. But I think we can shift in manufacturing this context of work-life balance. I think there is this piece that we have to, and again, balance is not a really good word. I don't like it because it's nothing is, balance assumes that things are same. Like, a balance is a scale, and it means it just stays,
yeah.
Right? It's really more of this integration. Like life is an ebb of flow. Like there are seasons. There are seasons where we have 50-hour weeks. There are seasons when we have 40-hour weeks. In manufacturing, it doesn't go below the 40, right? Like it's just, that's the floor. Like whereas in other jobs, like some sales jobs, for example, like you have some flexibility like week to week. Manufacturing is not the same. It's like people are showing up, you've got to lead and you've got to be there. Like there's meetings, drum beats, etc. But I just started, I'll give you an example of things that have shifted. I know a young man that just started working at Kellanova or starts working in October. He starts with 4 weeks vacation. That was unheard of.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, unheard of 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, no way. Like when I started with 10 days. 2 weeks vacation.
It's about
this
normal.
Guy starting in it's not normal. It's normal in Europe. I mean, my stint in Europe helped me see, like there was nobody in Europe that said, hey, man, I didn't take my vacation this year.
Yeah.
Like they take their vacation.
Right.
Right. That's one of the things that I learned when I was in that stint. I was over there a couple times. Like they take their vacation. They spend their time with their family. So I think we can start to shift things like that where we're going to have to do that, right? Like companies are going to have to adjust. 4 weeks vacation, honestly, should be the standard. In fact, a new person probably needs more time off because they're just getting used to the grind. Like that's why burnout happens, right? Burnout happens is because you never shut it off. Like if there's no off switch, and that is the hard part from an executive perspective, right? There isn't really an off switch. If you're a plant manager, your plant's running 24/7, it's hard. I remember being on the beach multiple times, on vacations, getting phone calls. I could have done some of that different, reflecting back. But what I did do is take the vacation, right? I learned that early on. I used to say, I carried over 2 weeks vacation. You ever do that? I carried over vacation. I'm like, God, what was I doing? Like if you think about it. So I just think, yeah, you gotta be prepared to work. But I think as leaders in this area, one of my passions is like, hey, we've got to make this an attractive place to be. And it better come with some benefits of like the time off. Like you work hard and you play hard or rest hard. That's got to shift.
If someone watching, Aaron, wants to get into manufacturing or supply chain, like what skills are companies desperate for right now, right? You got all these jobs that are coming back to the United States. You got all these people who maybe want to consider these jobs, but don't know how to position themselves. Like, what do you think are the skills that our companies are desperate to have to fill those 400,000 jobs that are going to be coming here?
I think it's people with high technical skills, right? So if you've got programming skills, you've got the ability to look at computer programming and software and that kind of stuff, like that's a huge opportunity because that is only going to get more and more, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like that's one. I think number two, data analytics and being able to filter through data, sort data, to be able to, form conclusion, provide direction on what's working or what's not working, is critical. I think three, I do believe there still is just this level of like, hey, we've got some, not so much highly manual, but like there's jobs on the line, right? So if you've got technical skills, mechanical aptitude, and a desire to like see things happen or just, make things work, I think that's another area.
I love it. We've talked about the real opportunity here in manufacturing with it coming back to the United States and it being a pro. But let's talk about the human cost of climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
Because, there are executives that I come across that have paid the price for success, right? And right now you are helping high achieving men who are drowning in work and running on fumes. Why do smart, successful people end up in this place? Like, what's the pattern that you see over and over?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think one goes back to the drive and the the dopamine and ego, right? It is because they get accolades along the way, right? And people tell you that, oh my gosh, you're at this role, blah, 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 blah. That must have been great. Like, right. There is a set of like this piece of ego that plays into it. And that drive, they don't know how to shut that drive off, right? Because it is literally just taking them to the top. I think number two is they don't know any other way. And they get lost in the perspective. I just talked to a guy, who's one of my clients recently, makes a little over 200,000 a year. But that job requires him to be away from his family at 4 months in a row. And he's miserable. He's absolutely miserable, but he has no other perspective, right? Because what he tells himself is that he's providing for his family. Like that is the predominant story. Yeah, but I'm providing for my family. But you're not present for your family. Like when I asked him the question, what are you afraid of? He's like, well, I'm afraid my family will say I quit, or I'm like, but is that really true? Would you rather your family rather have you and you make less money than? He's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay, but he can't see that because he's so into the like, well, I have to do this to provide. And I think when I was at the end of my career at P&G, at 22 years, that handcuff is pretty tight. And I think you mentioned it earlier, like it's not the short-term rewards are really good, at a senior level, your salary and bonus is good, but your long-term rewards become incredibly good, like life-changing type of rewards. And those are typically stretched out over, 2 to 5 years, if you will. Right. So you're constantly like, I got to stay to cash in that number. Right. You're constantly looking at what could be. Right. And it's like, and it keeps you from making that move. And I found myself back in Switzerland again, 30 days in a row, my family not there, my marriage straining, my relationship with my youngest son straining. And I'm like, what am I doing? And it wasn't until some other people gave me some perspective that I was like, no, I can go do some other things. I could actually leave P&G. And that was a really hard decision. I was not upset with P&G. P&G is a wonderful company. I made the choice to be in the role that I was in. But I didn't think I could leave because that was all I knew. I think if you're listening out there, like your skills fundamentally are transferable. And in today's world, if you're absolutely miserable, you deserve to be happy. And I think this piece of like, no, I got to do what I got to do. I'm providing. There's no other opportunity is a big lie. Like there are many opportunities out there. And for me, once I decided to go, a company like you mentioned earlier, GSK came to the table. A company like Central Garden that I worked at came to the table. Like those things opened up, and those were actually ladder ups. So when we talk about the climb that you talk about, right? I literally skipped 2 steps from VP to Chief Supply Chain Officer because I went outside, and the skills that I had learned in that big blue chip to be able to apply in a company, a smaller company, were incredibly impactful. But I never thought that I could do it until other people actually helped me see it. And so that's part of why I'm passionate about the coaching, Antoine, is because if you've never been somewhere, then how do you know where to go next? Right? If you don't have a mentor that cares more about you than they care about the company, then you're not in there. Like you need to get one that can give you some perspective, right? That can help you see things that are different. Because oftentimes we just don't see it.
Yeah.
Because we've never been there.
Your Unstuck master plan, it promises people can break free without, sacrificing what they built. How is that actually possible? Like, what is the step-by-step process?
Yeah, I think it first starts with understanding that there are multiple parts of us, right? The physical health, and we call it the core 4. So Antoine's very versed in the core 4, right? Your physical health, your relational health, your spiritual and mental health, and your business, career, finances are completely integrated. most of us think them as separate, like isolated parts of your life. Like we think of them as isolated until something bad happens, right? Like in corporate America, you know, I've heard this happen or seen this happen a million times. Oh, you're having a heart attack. You know, somebody has a heart attack, and then you're like, oh, Antoine, take whatever time you need to get better and get ready. Meanwhile, all the preventative stuff that we should have been doing, like taking walks, you know, not, you know, like, I mean, it's worse. Corporate break rooms, corporate, travel, like it's the worst, right? Like all of the sweet snacks, all of the things that are there, right? We're not actually providing an environment for people to actually be their best. We're actually providing the environment for them to continue to get dragged down. But when something bad happens, we know, like it affects your work. If your marriage is in a spot where like you're about ready to get a divorce or you're getting a divorce, everybody says, man, I'm so sorry, Antoine. Take whatever time you need, brother. Like take whatever time you need. Like, where were you on Friday night at 7:00 when you should be on a date with your wife or your husband? You know, like you should actually be doing that and say, get out of the office. Like and as a senior leader, by the way, everybody watches you. Everybody watches what you're doing. So if you're there at 7:00 at night, who else do you think is watching what's happening? But this conversation of like how those things are tied, how I promise that is that when you take care of those other areas, they will actually lift your productivity and focus. We often have this, I mean, there's a whole set of training on like being in the zone. They call it the flow, call it flow. And it very clearly shows that people who work more than, 50 hours a week actually have diminishing returns on the same, if you work in the same area for 50 hours. Now, most corporate people think that if you work more, the more you get done, the more you'll be able to get done. The reality is that beyond that 50, like you're not as productive. And so 1 hour of input does not equal 1 hour of output. 1 hour of input actually equals 3/4 of an hour of an output. And so you're actually not being productive. When you would actually take the time to rest and get deep sleep and get REM sleep, your ideas are going to be sharper. Like when you actually take time to get in the gym and allow all of the toxins to get out and to get that dopamine rush from something natural rather than, scrolling or a meeting, like you're going to be sharper, right? And for, right now we're still trying to figure out mental health. And I think mental health, spiritual health are kind of tied in the same area because it's all about in your head. Like we need to be teaching people how to defragment. It's like your computer, when you leave open like 17 tabs and we do it, like I think the most epitome thing of what's going on today in the world is go look at somebody's Chrome tabs, like how many browsers they have open, right? Like it got so bad that on your phone that Chrome actually shuts them down if they've been inactive, right? Like I have 200 Chrome tabs open, like that. We have to help people defrag. It's slowing everything down. And the answer is not working more. The answer is doing other things that actually help you recover physically. I mean, when your wife and children are in a good spot with you, like, man, you're like kind of bulletproof, right? Because you're good, but when you walk into work and you're like, you just had a fight on the way out, and you're going into work, you're like, man, I got to shut that off now. And I got to do this. It does affect you. Yep. And so that's how I, help people understand like these things in this ecosystem of your physical health, relational health, spiritual, mental health, and career are all tied together. We just don't know it because we don't talk about it.
Dive a little bit deeper too, Aaron, into the spiritual piece of it. I can give my perspective on that because that was an area when you and I have discussed and an area that I needed to improve, but dive a little bit more into that piece of it.
Yeah, I think there is a piece of this where, again, that you're not alone, right? And there's two pieces of that context of knowing you're not alone. There's community that you need to be in, where people that actually tell you the truth and actually support you and actually care for you and tell you the tough things. But then there's this other piece of like most, if you think about most of America, they have some sort of faith. Like it is part of it, like it is the majority, right? And the question is how are you using that faith to make you strong? right? And how does that come into play with your work? And many times we think of those things as separate, but they're absolutely not separate. And so if you believe that there is a creator or something bigger than you, and that being can talk to you and can give you some advice or give you guidance, or you pray to this thing, being, and for me, it's God. I'm a Christian. I'm proudly that. But doesn't mean that I think that others don't have something that they need to follow, right? But my point is like, if that is part of your life, that can be an absolute pillar of strength for you. I remember walking in board meetings, praying that I would use the right words before the meeting, right? Because you go into a board meeting and you're trying to get something done, or if I went into a meeting with like a leadership meeting where I was trying to get a decision, man, the first thing I would pray for is like, give me the right words and give me peace. And again, peace and contentment in this mind that is racing all the time in mental health is like, man, if I could just have peace when I walk in here today to say, you know what, I did my very best and I asked for some help, man, I walk out very different. I just think that we oftentimes pray when things are bad and we don't pray when things are good and we want them to be better. And I'll give you an example. Last night, I was telling you earlier that I went to a city planning meeting in our town here in Ohio because we're doing some building products. And you can best bet that before that meeting, what I was doing was spending some time in prayer of saying, hey, I want some help in this case. And help give me peace because I've never done this before, right? Like I'm sitting in a meeting on, I've never done these things. I just want some peace and the right words to come. And integrating that is something that we don't talk about very often.
That is so true when it comes down to corporate, but I'm almost seeing some changes of that, Aaron. And before you left,
sure.
Were you seeing those same changes as well, too, where people were more open to discussing their religious faith, their faith in general? Were you seeing that at the executive level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would tell you, in the leadership team I was on, it was, people were very open with their faith, and that was refreshing, right? I think there was a period of time where that was taboo.
Yep.
Right. Where it was like, But I think that's why I mentioned the mental health aspect of it, as the awareness has come. They're tied together. Right. This conversation of mental health and spiritual health, for me, like it's in the same space. And again, I'm not saying that all mental health is a spiritual problem. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm just saying is like they occupy the same territory. And as we've become aware of that, I think people's ability to share their faith as something that they do without being judgmental, has increased. I mean, the last company I was at, there was a couple times where again, some of this was, just location dependent and the size of the company. Like I was in part of meetings where people prayed before the meeting. And I was like, I've never seen this happen before. So there were different things that occurred that I thought were pretty encouraging. And then I just think that if you're in a different country, it's not really questioned. Like having lived in Europe and having been to India like multiple times, faith is part of their faith is part of who they are. If you're Hindu, if you're Buddhist, or if you're, Muslim, that's your thing. And you're not threatened because Antoine, you're, a Muslim and I'm a Christian. Like that's not a threatening thing in other countries. Yeah. I think here in the US for a while it was, but I see that starting to shift where it's like, no. And of course we've got a lot of stuff that's, a lot of stuff in the last couple of weeks that have certainly escalated that of visibility and awareness. But yeah, I do think it's changing, and I think that's a good thing. I think we can't just try to do it on our own.
Love it. Let's make this practical, because my audience is dealing with AI disruption, jobs disruption, H-1B visa changes, massive layoffs. When it comes to these impacts, AI disruption, their jobs, H-1B, visa changes, massive layoffs. How would you help someone navigate that career uncertainty when they're also trying to maintain a work-life balance?
That's a great question. We talked about Procter & Gamble earlier in the 100 jobs that are coming into Iowa City. But if you reverse and look in the news in Procter & Gamble, they also announced that, pretty significant layoff. I think it's 7,000 jobs was the number, right? So it's like 7,000 out and 100 in. So I think, if you're going through that uncertainty, then I think the one thing that you need to do is make sure that the other areas of your life are getting strengthened. Right? Because now is not the time it becomes a death spiral, right? You get wound up because you're uncertain about your job. So you stop working out. Or just walking. I'll just use the benefits of walking 10,000 steps every day. You stop doing those things, your body's going to start to regress. Your mind starts to regress. You're not going to be as sharp. If you're going through those things, you should be leaning deeper into your faith in this period of time. You should make sure that you're strong in all those other areas so that you can be open and aware for the opportunities that could be coming your way. Part of the problem is we get so in our heads about these jobs, about what is actually happening, that we are unable to see other opportunities. Like, I truly believe that's the case. Because we are not open, because we have stopped all the other disciplines, and then you really get stuck. And that's the piece that I, as I talk about in the program, like, you need to jumpstart the other areas if you're uncertain about this one, because it's going to open you up. First job I ever got, that co-op job that changed my life, I had 3 Ds on the board. I was literally going to get a D in in physics, organic chemistry, and biology in college. I was doing a lot of other stuff besides going to class. But I was in the gym doing squats with a leg day. And a friend of mine came in the gym and said, "Hey, I just had this opportunity. I got a co-op job at this company, and they asked me if I knew anybody else. Would you be interested?" That's how I got my first co-op job that changed my life, because I was in the gym. So I think, you've got to make sure that you double down on the other areas of your life and not regress in those areas, so that you can be open and aware of opportunities that are to come.
I love that, Aaron, because you're so right. When people are going through, tragic events that's happened in their lives, let's just say they lose their job, right? They fall off on many aspects of their life, and they go into a miserable pattern. But also there's people who, if you think about it, right? Like, there's people who are looking to level up in their lives. And what do? They almost double down, right? They go and lose weight, right? They go to the gym to work out a little bit harder. They put themselves in positions for opportunities to come their way, right? Looking their best, talking their best, digesting information. And it's the opposite when something bad happens. So you're basically saying, is, just as you would treat it as you're looking to get promoted, you need to be looking the same exact way if something bad was to happen, right? Look at your physical health, because that can bring opportunities. It certainly did for you in the gym, right? Yeah. Going to the gym, you're absolutely right. My gym buddies in the morning, they all are high achieving males and females. And we get an opportunity to talk when we, walk by each other for a little bit, but opportunities open up by having those conversations. You're also seeing in the house of faith, whatever that is for you. If you put yourself out there during that time as well, there are opportunities in that as well. I love that you said that. That's, and it's true, right? But we don't often look at it that way, because when you're going through difficult times, you often are silent. You often are dealing with it yourself and not opening that up and sharing that with other people.
Yeah. I mean, every part of us wants to do, I just thinking through this, like, every part of this, like, when I've gone through moments like that, I just want to get a huge Mountain Dew and a bunch of candy like Mike and Ike's or Twizzler or, or M&Ms or Starburst jelly beans and binge watch Netflix. And there is a time and place for that, right? Because we're all going to go through that. So like what I'm not saying is that, hey, something bad happens, you might need to take a period where you just chill. But that period can't last very long. Like there has to be a point where energetically that all of those things that you just talked about, there is a difference between a person who is high energy and we can talk about this scientifically, but like a person who is on fire in those other areas shows up differently.
It's true.
They show up differently. Like in a person that's lost 50 pounds. I mean, I look at my brother, I love him to death. Like my brother's lost 50 pounds, and he's showing up way different, not just physically, but energetically, like the light on in his eyes and like the fire that he has, like it's very different. And so which person do you want to be? The person, which one do you think is going to attract the best next job? It's very clear, right? It's very clear when you think about it in that lens.
It's so true. You have told your sons that if you're not growing, you're dying. But growth means discomfort and risk. How do you balance pushing for growth and maintaining stability?
Yeah, I think I'm just like any good supply chain leader. I have backup plans, right? Like so when I think through like what we're doing now, like, and I shared this on my podcast yesterday, like this is new frontier for me. Like I'm eating into savings. I'm eating into some, things that I don't want to do. There's retirement plans that I might have to do to continue to fund this game. But I've got like 4 or 5 different options, right? So I am really always looking at like, well, what's the backup plan or what's the contingency plan? Like, and I'm always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead in the context of like, how do I balance what that could look like? And so for me, there's risk and then there's risk with parachutes, right? Like, it's like, well, if that one doesn't work, then here's what I'll do next. If that doesn't work, here's what I'll do next. Because I think that's important for us to have, right? It's always good to be like, and there's a good example for this is networking. Like you should always be networking. If I would go back into my career, I would have done 2 LinkedIn calls a month or something with somebody that was in the network just to meet people. Like just to keep that name out there, to continue to network and be on the radar, and I do that quite often now where I'll meet with people and I'll be able to connect them with different opportunities, but I wish I would have done that earlier. Again, that's part of just keeping up your backup plans, right? You should always be, have some sort of backup plan.
You, one of the things that I know is that you offer a free Unstuck life assessment that takes about 8 minutes, maybe even shorter than that now.
Right. So I think I got it down to maybe 5 now. Yeah.
What can someone actually learn about themselves in that amount of time?
I think when you ask yourself where you at, oftentimes we just respond with, I'm good. But what does good actually look like? And what does great look like? And this assessment that we've put together, it's literally 8 questions across your physical health, your relational health, your spiritual and mental health, and your career and finances. But it's going to create a standard. Like there are basically four levels of this thing, A, B, C, and D. And you're going to see, am I at A or B, C, or D? And we need something to measure it against, and oftentimes we get delusional about where things really are. I mean, I always use this analogy. Like when I was young, I put on a lot of weightlifting. And every person that I've ever met in the history of my life in 50 years that's been lifting weights and they're in a bulk phase will say, yeah, but it's all muscle. We all say that, right? It's like, I put on 20 pounds of muscle. I'm like, first of all, it's scientifically impossible to do that in the last year. However, go get on the scale. The scale will tell you what's real. The life assessment gives you standards of which to measure against, gives you some opportunities to see, am I really where I think I am, or am I a little bit lower? And as you think about those areas, if you can make just one action against that area that might be a little bit lower, it's going to help elevate your entire being from a energetically perspective, right? Like you're going to be able to take things to that next level because you were exposed. I did it when I was 2001. I was 26 years old, and I realized that my spiritual connection was a 2 out of 10. And that sent me on a journey of exploration, because I'm like, what if that gap in my spiritual section could actually, if I did improve that to a 5, what if that really would make my whole life better? And I'm like, that's worth exploring. And that changed. I mean, that's why I'm here today. Right. So I think that just by reflecting against the standard and actually taking a step back, it's going to open up some doors for you that you can take some pretty quick actions if you'd like.
As someone who's taken this assessment, when I first took that assessment, it opened my eyes up to a lot of things, right? The financial piece was pretty strong. My faith was, and spiritual piece of it was low. I thought my physical health was okay, but now looking back at it, kind of like you, right? I said 2 years ago, well, I'm just in the bulking phase. I was at 240 something pounds, right? And then, you know, it isn't until I look back and look at some of those videos and I'm like, holy crap, man, like I was a big boy. The scale wasn't telling me that and nobody else wasn't telling me that. But the reality of it is, as people may say, I was a big bat. It's unfortunate to say it, but it's the reality of it, right? It's so helpful. It has allowed for me to think about how much I wanted to grow in other areas and how much I've done it, right? With making sure I'm consistent, going to the gym, waking up at 3:30 in the morning, being there at 4. Also showing me that at that time, only 3 workouts a day and still, you know, drinking wine and, you know, eating Skittles and all that other stuff it wasn't helping. It was hurting, right? And knowing where I wanted to be, it opened my eyes up to a lot. And I will tell you guys this, maybe you haven't seen the transformation within me. Maybe you have, but for the people who are very, very close, like my wife, my kids, Aaron, my coach here, they've seen the transformation, and it's real. I'm a testimony to it. Like even this show that I do on a daily as a daily climb on Monday through Friday, if I wouldn't have gone through the Unstuck master plan, I wouldn't have had the ideas to do something like this. I wouldn't have had the mentorship, the network that would even support it. So it's important, guys. It's very, very important. But Aaron, for someone watching who recognizes themselves in the successful, because this was me, but stuck description, you know, what's the very first thing that they should do today? Not next month, but today.
Yeah, like right now, you should go take that assessment. You should go to unstuckmasterplan.com. It literally takes 5 minutes. You know, I am not going to know why you rated the score a 5 or an 8 or, you know, whatever that is. So that part is completely on you. But I would say go take that assessment right now and see where you're at. And part of that opportunity is like, hey, you want to chat with me and get some perspective? You know, I offer that as part of the assessment. So go take that assessment today.
Love it. Last question. What are 3 red flags that someone, they need to make a change before they end up in a crisis mode, right? Like a lot of people do. What are those 3 red flags that you can tell someone that they need to make a change before they end up in a really, really bad situation?
Yeah. First one is sleep. If you're not getting sleep and you're telling yourself that you're continuing to work and then you're not getting sleep, it's a big problem. Antoine knows this. We talk about this, right? It's a big problem because I hear this all the time. I only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. It's a big problem and you're going to burn out. Like we're not created to sustain that over time, you know? So like you better get at least the 6, you know, like get at least a 6, right? So like that's one. I think number 2 is just that comes to mind immediately is alcohol usage. What I find is that many of us are recreational alcohol users. So like weekends, Friday night or Saturday. But when that starts to creep into the week, that's a warning sign. Because now all of a sudden you've again, and by the way, as much as I love a good bourbon, which I do, it doesn't help your productivity in any way, shape, or form, right? It affects your sleep. And so during the week, now all of a sudden, now you've added something that you think is helping, but it's not. And number 3, if you're married or dating someone and you have stopped going on dates, this is a problem. Because your ability to connect, you're going to start to be ships passing in the night. And that is a problem because you start to lose perspective, right? When you're not forced to actually sit with the person you care about the most and look them in the eyes, and you're not actually taking that time, you're not actually getting the feedback that you're getting off course. And so these are very 3 things where I'm like, I would just challenge yourself to look at, just to say, am I getting enough sleep? Have I started drinking more? And have I stopped doing things with my partner? And if those 3 things are happening, I think those are starting to become warning signs that you're starting to get burnt out and now on your way to being stuck.
Love it. Powerful conversation, Aaron. Thank you. Thank you again for coming on the Daily Climb and sharing your story with us and what you got going on and what you're doing. Guys, here's what you need to understand. Manufacturing jobs, they're coming back to America. Companies like P&G, Aaron used to work for, they are investing, $150 million in creating good paying jobs. Some is $31 an hour, more in some areas. But success in corporate America, it comes at a cost, and it comes with a cost. And Aaron showed us that, he's given us a good understanding of why 56% of executives are burnt out, why many of them have the imposter syndrome, why many feel trapped about, staying in corporate America because of their golden handcuffs. The good news is that you don't have to choose between success and happiness. You can have both, but it does require being completely honest with yourself about where you currently are. And if you guys want to connect with Aaron, just check out the Unstuck Master Plan. You'll see the website that's scrolling down at the bottom of the ticker here. It's free, and it'll show you exactly where you're stuck. I took it, and it's changed a lot about where I thought I was. It was a reflection, and it continues to do so. So, guys, if you want detailed career intelligence that we talked about today, join the Patreon at patreon.blackheights.com. $5 a month gets you exclusive research, career strategy that positions you as a central employee, and also to become an entrepreneur as well, too, instead of being someone who's replaceable. I appreciate you guys for rocking with me today. Looks like Teresa Wade says, good morning. NC Worker says, good morning, Miss Wade. Thank you. Corey says, NC Worker says, I think this is it. That is it. That's actually right. So drop the link in the chat, the assessment. Buttery Gold says, sleep is important. Our brains are built on gray matter when we don't sleep. NC Worker says, yep, I've been guilty of saying and doing that. Who else says something in here? NC Worker says, a lot of muscle weight also has water rather than fluid weight. That's that. Green KC says spiritual connection. Yes, it's true. Mr. Nix, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. It says, yes, network more. That's a great point that Aaron made. KO says, great information and great guests. Mikey says, great suggestion, Aaron. Medembe says, I'm glad that he's touching on the spiritual, man and woman. SNK says, this is awesome hearing the perspective from a leader. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing. Ant Dog says, excellent question. SNK also says, I wish all corporate environments took this approach, especially in regards to return to work. Fantastic show, guys. Thank you so much for your time. And we will see you on tomorrow's show, 7 a.m. Central. We'll do the weekly recap Friday. Take care, guys. Have a good day. Crush it today, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.